De'Aaron Fox's Sacramento homecoming was nice. And then Zach LaVine decided to completely spoil it. The Sacramento Kings dominate the San Antonio Spurs the way they were supposed to. It was mostly cheers, a little bit of boos inside the Golden One Center for De'Aaron Fox. And now the stretch of doom begins for the Kings. We're talking about it all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and tonight was fun, right? And in many ways, it lived up to what I was hoping for. I did say that I thought that this game would get to a point where it got boring. It never got to that point necessarily, but when I said that, what I was looking for was I knew the start of this game, there were going to be some emotions. There was going to be some energy with De'Aaron Fox's return, the tribute video, him being announced in front of this Kings crowd for the first time. How would they react? How would his former teammates play against him? How would he attack his former team on the floor, right? And then the rest of the game, things would kind of settle in. And assuming the Sacramento Kings kept playing the way that they've been playing over this recent stretch of basketball, I thought, yeah, the Kings should handle their business relatively comfortably against the San Antonio Spurs. Well, that's what they did. They beat the San Antonio Spurs tonight, 127-109. Let's talk about De'Aaron Fox and his reception first. I would say about 80% cheers to 20% boos. And I noticed very early on when he came out for warm-ups and everything, there were a lot of Fox jerseys, a lot of people coming out to see him warm up and to cheer for him a little bit pregame. I talked to a handful of fans before the game started, and there were a couple of fans that told me, like, we are here to make sure, like, we cheer as loud as we possibly can for Fox to attempt to drown out the boos. Now, these were just a couple of fans that told me this, but I wonder how many people came into the Golden One Center tonight to do the same. Like, look, obviously there's some people that feel a certain type of way about De'Aaron Fox and how everything ended here in Sacramento. And who am I to tell you whether or not you should feel that way or not, right? But the question was that just a very loud minority of people on social media? Or was that really the feel and the vibe of this fan base, that there was a venom or a frustration or an anger at De'Aaron Fox and him abandoning the Kings and how everything played out? And again, I talked to a couple of these fans that they made it their mission, like that side of the fan base that's frustrated doesn't necessarily represent us. So we want to make sure that Fox feels the love from us. So again, I'm not saying that most of the fan base felt that way, but I felt very clearly that during both the tribute video and when De'Aaron was introduced, that the majority of this crowd here in the Golden One Center was here to support Fox, show their appreciation for him, and cheer him. Now, the boos were very audible and very noticeable every time De'Aaron Fox touched the ball, because obviously you weren't going to have the rest of the crowd cheer every time Fox touched the ball. But the boos were loud when Fox would touch the ball at first. They kind of slowly quieted down over the course of the game. That was the time when the boos were really the most noticeable, but like the tribute video was not impacted by any means. Fox got a standing ovation from the vast majority of the Golden One Center after that tribute video was played, and he got a warm reception. Now, he didn't get as many cheers. Well, I should say his reception wasn't as universally cheered as Harrison Barnes's was. And this isn't Harrison's first game here in Sacramento. He came with the San Antonio Spurs earlier this season before the Fox trade and got a pretty good ovation then. But Harrison Barnes got more unanimous love, I suppose, tonight than De'Aaron Fox did. And HB had a pretty good shooting game. I think he went like 4 or 5 from three-point range or something like that. HB was shooting really, really well. But De'Aaron, all things considered, the reception, everything, all the emotions outside of that, Fox had a bad game. He did. And I think he'd be the first to tell you. In fact, post-game, he said he hasn't shot the ball well in 2 weeks. He certainly didn't shoot the ball well tonight. 16 points, 6 of 17 from the field, 0 of 6 from three-point range, did have 8 assists. But this was not the game that I expected from De'Aaron Fox. Now, we didn't get the pissed off version of De'Aaron Fox that I was expecting we were going to get. We got more of, and I felt this way just from the vibes from talking with De'Aaron at shoot-around this morning and chatting with him very briefly during warm-ups. There was a very relaxed vibe. And De'Aaron actually shared to a Spurs reporter post-game that when he goes down to L.A. in the near future, he's going to get his pinky looked at and could potentially have surgery on it when he goes down there. They said it's going to be a determination when he gets it looked at, which could potentially end his season. So maybe Fox is resigned to, this season is what it is. It's a wrap. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about the Spurs' future, but in the short term, it's kind of a wrap for this season. I'm back here in Sacramento, and I'm just going to try and enjoy my time being back here where I spent the first 8 years of my career. Maybe that was kind of Fox's approach to this game, but on the basketball floor, it certainly didn't work. Keon Ellis was excellent. Keon Ellis took on the early responsibilities of guarding De'Aaron Fox, and he had a steal on Fox and blocked one of Fox's shots in the first 8 or 9 minutes of this game, right? For the game in total, Keon Ellis 4 steals and a block tonight. Keon just continuing his incredible on-ball defense that he's been providing, and De'Aaron Fox I'm sure Fox has faced Ellis a time or two in practice over the years here in Sacramento, but to see it in game action in real time, I'm not going to say Keon Ellis had a better game than De'Aaron Fox or outplayed De'Aaron Fox by any means. Well, maybe he did, to be honest with you. But in that one-on-one matchup, defensively, Keon Ellis got, I won't say the best of De'Aaron, but he made De'Aaron work. Let's just say that. So it was great to see Keon doing that. Here is De'Aaron post-game talking about the reception that he got from this Kings crowd and just the emotions of the night.
I think it was good. Obviously, like I said, I enjoyed my time. I really enjoyed the fans, and you cheer for your team, so it was definitely good.
After that trip, you get a little emotional at all, or is it just?
I wouldn't say I really got emotional, but it was great. Like I said, I was here for so long, almost a decade, so I really do appreciate it.
It was good to get that part out the way, though, so you can just move on with your career. You still got a long career ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I hope I play 10 plus more years, and so I'll be back. I'll be here. So it was definitely good to get the first one out of the way.
How much had you thought about this night over the past several weeks?
I haven't. I'm not gonna lie to you. I knew it would come, but for me, it was rather, are we gonna come here on a winning streak or a losing streak? So.
Do you feel like it impacted you in any way on the court?
No, I haven't made a shot in 2 weeks, man. But like I said, at the end of the day, when you change teams, at some point you're gonna play the team, and sometimes we played San Antonio and Sacramento played each other 4 times this year. So I don't know how many times it'll be next year, but it'll be 4, 3. It could be 5 or 6. So it's gonna happen.
So initially coming into the night, everything was about De'Aaron Fox, right? His return to Sacramento, his reception, blah, 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 blah. But starting from the second quarter onward, this night became all about Zach LaVine, right? You talk about out with the old and in with the new. De'Aaron Fox is out, Zach LaVine comes in, and Zach LaVine put on another show for Kings fans in the Golden One Center. 36 points, 14 of 22 from the field, 7 of 11 from three-point range, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. The Kings actually trailed the Spurs at the end of the first quarter, 26-20. Both teams didn't get off to the best offensive starts, but Sacramento was struggling to score the ball in the first quarter as kind of all the emotions of everything were settling in and dying down. And then the second quarter happened, and Zach LaVine just said, give me the freaking ball, and took over, right? Zach LaVine, 16 points in the second quarter. The Kings outscored the Spurs 36-16 in that second quarter. And in fact, they held the Spurs to single digits scoring-wise in that quarter for at least 2/3 of it. right? Like defensively, the Kings were having a really good quarter, and then offensively, Zach LaVine started cooking and built his confidence up. He was fantastic. He has been on one of the craziest shooting hot streaks that I've ever seen. And it's amazing how little it's being talked about around the league because it's here in Sacramento. If Zach LaVine were doing this in Chicago, if Zach LaVine were doing this, of course, in like LA, we'd be hearing about it nonstop. Y'all, over the last 6 games where the Kings are 5-1, Zach LaVine is 30 of 45 from three-point range. That's 66%. High volume, high percentage over a 6-game stretch. My man is scorching hot shooting the basketball right now. Now, here's the reality. Even though he's one of the best three-point shooters in the league, I think he's top 7 or top 8. He and Keon Ellis are like neck and neck in terms of shooting percentage, or hovering around like 41, 42, 43%. He's one of the best three-point shooters percentage-wise in the league right now. So it's not like his shooting is going to fall off a cliff. And, of course, it took him like 5 or 6 games here in Sacramento when he first got traded here to find that three-point shot. We were a little concerned early on because he was not shooting the basketball well. Well, he's figured it out. The pendulum has completely swung now in the positive direction. But it's going to start to come back a little bit. I don't think I'm surprising anyone by saying Zach LaVine's probably not going to shoot 66% from three-point range for the remainder of this season, especially on the high volume of threes that he's putting up per game right now. But what I like from LaVine is, I mean, he's shooting so unbelievably well right now that even if it comes down to earth a little bit, it'll still be a solid percentage. And LaVine is so dangerous shooting the basketball right now that he can put the ball on the floor and get to the rim at will, it feels like. Like the Spurs had no answer for him. And the Spurs are just one of a few teams over the course of the last couple of weeks that have just had no answer for LaVine. Because you aggressively close out from 3, okay, he's going to put the ball on the floor and attack the basket and either get to a mid-range jumper or get to the rim. But you sag off of him, he's going to pull up from 3 in transition, and that shot, the basket looks like an ocean to Zach LaVine right now. I mean, the way he's shooting the basketball is absolutely superb, and it's fitting in a lot of ways. Now, one game and even a couple of weeks don't tell the story and don't decide the winner or loser of a trade. And I apologize about all the noise in the background. They're working on the Golden One Center. They're working on something down there in the Golden One Center right now. But it's only been a couple of weeks, and I know LaVine's on a hot tear, but it's maybe symbolic to some people that De'Aaron Fox comes back to Sacramento and plays as poorly as he did, and Zach LaVine is here in Sacramento putting on the show that he did. If you want to take that as an omen for the future of the Sacramento Kings, hey, be my guest, run with it if that makes you feel good. But right now, Zach LaVine is shooting the you-know-what out of the ball. He's playing fantastic, and the Sacramento Kings are following suit. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's easy to use, available in over 30 states, and lets you mix and match projections across different sports. You can build lineups for specific games, like you could build a lineup specifically around tonight's game, whether you thought De'Aaron Fox would score more or less than, let's say, 23.5 points, and Zach LaVine would make more or less than 2.5 threes, and Keon Ellis would have more or less than 2.5 combined blocks and steals, right? These are different ways that you could play on a specific game, like tonight, if you're just looking at a Kings versus whoever matchup, or you could go more broad for an entire night in the NBA, or when baseball season begins, you can have games that or days where you're picking basketball picks in addition to baseball picks to try and get as many right to win as much cash as you possibly can. There's so many creative, fun, and unique ways to win and to play on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So how about this newfound defense for the Sacramento Kings? Right, they have this 6-game stretch where they were very close to being 6-0. We know they unfortunately fell apart and lost that game late in Denver the other night. But they're playing, I think, their best basketball this season, bar none. Over the course of this stretch, if they're not number one in defensive rating, they're top 2 or top 3. And their offensive rating is right up there as well. Doug Christie has these boys playing, but defensively, that's where I'm so surprised. Right, I'm not gonna lie to you, and we saw it a little bit early on after all the trades. I was expecting the Sacramento Kings to give up 120 points a night. True, just looking at this roster, that's what. And I know Keon Ellis is playing more, and Jonas Valanciunas, who's been playing fantastic, is playing more because Domantas Sabonis and Malik Monk are out. But this team is playing out of their mind defensively right now. Now, again, you could put a caveat or an asterisk by this win streak if you want to, or this good stretch if you want to, because a majority of the teams that they're playing and beating are not the best teams right now, but ultimately they're doing what they're supposed to do, right? So how can we hold it against them when they're playing the way that we want them to play? Defensively, even against some of the worst teams in the NBA, to do what the Kings are doing, right? In the 5 games that they've won out of this in the last 6, right? These are just the 5 wins. The Kings are allowing only 99.8 points per game. So in this 5-win stretch, including a win in Houston, this win here tonight, a win against Dallas, a win against Utah, right? Over this 5-win stretch, the Sacramento Kings are holding their opponents to under 100 points per game. To put that into perspective, if you were to take that 99.8 points per game allowed and put that into the overall this season, best defenses, that would be number 1 in the NBA by nearly a 7-point margin. That's how good defensively the Sacramento Kings are playing right now. The best defense in the NBA this season is the Orlando Magic, I believe, averaging about 106.3 or something like that points per game allowed. The Kings, in this last stretch, in 5 of the last 6 games, are allowing 99.8 points per game. And honestly, you add that Denver Nuggets loss in there, it's probably barely into the 100s. The Kings defensively are playing fantastic basketball right now. And I hope it carries on. I hope it continues. They'll get a good test starting Sunday with the LA Clippers. We'll talk about that more in just a second. And when you talk about defense, of course, we already talked about Keon Ellis, the great game that he had. You also have to talk about Keegan Murray. And Keegan Murray tonight, Zach LaVine is the star 100%, but Keegan Murray had a really freaking good game tonight. A really good game. 19 points, 7 of 14 from the field, 3 of 7 from three-point range, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Keegan Murray, fantastic. His confidence with the ball right now is very noticeable. Right, even if the shot's not dropping, watch Keegan over this last couple of weeks. Go back and watch some highlights, or hopefully it carries into this Sunday. Watch Keegan this Sunday. He's putting the ball on the deck. He's looking for a shot. He's catching and shooting with confidence. His first move, watch his eyes. His first move is to look at the rim and see and decide, is this the right shot to take? Or then if I'm not feeling it, or if there's a defender too close, or there's a better play, then I'll swing the ball or make the move I have to make, or even put the ball on the deck. We're seeing him put the ball on the ground a little bit more and trying to attack a little bit more in that sense, which is great. You always want more of that from Keegan. He's getting to his spots better. He's finding spots that he likes to get to more frequently. But you're seeing his impulse change from the hesitation that he had earlier this season with how poorly he was shooting to catch, look, ready to score, and he's shooting with confidence. Look, 3 of 7 from three-point range. He missed more threes than he made tonight. I don't care. 3 of 7 is fantastic from Keegan. And again, putting the ball on the floor, he had more field goals inside three-point range than he did from beyond the arc. So he's not just a three-point merchant. That's not the only way that he's scoring. I love the aggressiveness that I'm seeing from Keegan. Of course, he continues to crash the glass. Like I said, 9 rebounds in tonight's game. He's all over the glass offensively still, and then defensively he's doing his job too. I love what I'm seeing from Keegan, and after the game I noticed that De'Aaron Fox and Keegan had a long conversation together at about center court. I actually captured some of it and videoed some of it. You can check it out on my Twitter account or X account, @MattGeorgeSack. But I got the opportunity to ask De'Aaron about that interaction with Keegan and just his thoughts on Keegan, and even Fox shares that he heard Keegan trash talk a little bit for the first time in Keegan's career. Saw your conversation with Keegan at the end. Don't necessarily need to share what that was, but I know you talked about Keegan earlier, just the relationship that you've blossomed with him and his next step.
Yeah, I mean, I've been with Keegan, obviously, every game up until a month ago of his career. So it's always great seeing his development and just who he is as a person. We're about to go get dinner, but he had to go let Ollie out first. So, I love Keegan, and we still talk, and we still talk all the time. So.
You talk any trash at all? Any fun banter between you two?
After he got offensive rebound, I think Steph got his 5th foul. He was like, "Get your rook, Fox." Actually, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been the one he fouled out. No, I think it was the one that was his 5th foul.
So look, all in all, in tonight's game and over this stretch, the Kings did what they have to do. Again, I've been very pessimistic about this group. And I still have my reservations and my concerns about this team and ultimately their ability to make the playoffs. I have concerns about this team going into this really difficult stretch that they're about to begin on Sunday. Those haven't been fixed for me. But what I've been asking for from the Sacramento Kings, they have been providing. And again, as much as we want to undermine what they're doing and put an asterisk next to it and go, yeah, but it's against Utah. Yeah, it's against San Antonio. Yeah, it's against the shorthanded Mavericks, blah, 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 blah. Like, I get it. I hear you. They've beaten the Wizards, the Nets, the Hornets, the Jazz, the Mavs, and the Spurs all recently in the Doug Christie era. So a good portion of Doug Christie's wins have been against bad or super shorthanded injured teams, right? I get it. But at the same time, if things weren't going well in these games, we would be hitting every bit of panic button, right? We would be extremely concerned. So the fact that they are not just winning these games, but they're handling these games comfortably. There are other wins in there. But these games that I just listed out for you, those wins that I just listed out, are all by comfortable margins under Doug Christie. That's becoming a consistency. The Kings are comfortably beating the teams that they should be beating. That's really encouraging. And in doing so, they're playing really, really good defense. The offense is starting to warm up. Zach LaVine is shooting lights freaking out right now. DeMar DeRozan is still very effective. Keegan Murray's becoming more comfortable. I know Sabonis and Malik Monk are out, and hopefully they come back and pick right up where they left off. But Jonas Valanciunas has been holding it down in that center position, right? Like, we're seeing a lot of really good things from the Sacramento Kings individually and as a team right now. And that's encouraging. They went into tonight's game knowing the circumstances of everything surrounding it, and they did what they had to do, which is beat the San Antonio Spurs pretty comfortably and remind the Spurs that, hey, you're a team on the outs, and we're a team that's in the midst of a playoff hunt. You're not playing for anything other than De'Aaron's pride. We're playing for our season still right now. That's how the Sacramento Kings looked, and I thought they did a good job treating this game that way. But now the stretch of doom begins. I'll talk about that stretch of doom, plus there's some videos that have surfaced of interactions between De'Aaron Fox's wife, Rasay, and Malik Monk after the game. I'll touch on that very briefly, plus the Athletic article that came out today that had some interesting stuff about the Sacramento Kings that I encourage you to read. Plus, Luke Laux is leaving the Sacramento Kings coaching staff. I'll talk about all that more before we wrap up the show here in just a second. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, hey, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting features are exciting and fun. It keeps every moment of the game fresh, whether you're backing your favorite team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three like Zach LaVine. You never miss your chance to have fun and put your stamp on the game. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $150 in bonus bets on FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So here we go, stretch of doom time. Look, the Kings are 33-29. They're 4 games above 500. They're sitting in 9th place. Unfortunately, none of the standings changed from tonight because the LA Clippers beat the New York Knicks this evening. So the Kings are still in 9th place, but they're half a game back of the Clippers, who they play in the Intuit Dome on Sunday. That's their next game. A really, really big, important game coming up. And this is the start of what I'm calling the doom stretch, right? You have the Clippers in LA, the Knicks here in Sacramento, the Warriors at Golden State. That's a massive game. The Suns in Phoenix. That's a big game. The Memphis Grizzlies here in Sacramento, the Cleveland Cavaliers here in Sacramento, the Chicago Bulls here in Sacramento, the Milwaukee Bucks here in Sacramento, and then you end it with a back-to-back against the Boston Celtics and Oklahoma City Thunder here in Sacramento. This is your sink or swim moment. This is where your season's going to be decided. Are you a lower-end play-in team? Are you a 9th or 10th seed? You'll end up there if you are losing a majority of these games. Or are you a team that can make a potential run for a top 6 seed or can really do what they needed to do to at the very least, secure 7th or 8th, which is a massive difference. Being 7th or 8th in the play-in versus 9th or 10th is a massive, massive difference, right? What kind of team are you? This is the time that we're really going to see this team tested. Because, yes, they're playing their best basketball of the season right now. Yes, I'm extremely encouraged by a lot of what I'm seeing from this Kings team, and I'm feeling better about this team than I was feeling a couple weeks ago. But I haven't certainly done a 180 on where this team is at because I need to see how they will handle this gauntlet coming up, right? This is the stretch that's going to be nerve-wracking. It's going to decide their season. It's going to really put them to the test and show, is this team real, or are they just a team that can beat bad teams but struggle against the good to great teams that they're going to have to worry about? Because remember, like, if the Kings make the playoffs, they're making it as a 6th, 7th, or 8th seed. That means they're taking on a top 3 team in the West. They're going to be these are the teams that they are going to be facing. This is the quality of team that they are going to be facing in the first round of the playoffs. So this is a measuring stick. This is a good test. And I'm anxious to see how this Sacramento Kings team performs. So on March 26th, when that stretch of doom is done, March 25th is their second night of a back-to-back against the Oklahoma City Thunder. On March 26th, the Kings are 4 games above 500 right now and are 9th place in the West. Where do they end up at the end of that stretch? You let me know. How many wins? What's their record? And what place are they in the West at the end of this stretch? If they have moved up at all in the standings, and if they are still, I'd say, 3 or more games above 500, I'm feeling really good with where the Sacramento Kings are at and their ability to ultimately secure a good play-in spot. But we'll have to wait and see when they get through it. All right, there's a video that surfaced. I didn't see this happening personally. I was too busy watching De'Aaron Fox meet up with some of his old teammates and dap them up after the game was over. But an interaction was caught on video between De'Aaron Fox's wife, Rasay, and Malik Monk. Now, I was not privy to the conversation, of course. I don't want to go too far into speculation about what the conversation could be about. All I can do is read body language. And it was pretty clear that Rasay was pretty agitated by body language. I'm not a lip reader either. It's not that close of an angle. I can't really see what they're talking about, but there's clearly some agitation and some issues there between Rasay and Malik. I'm not going to speak on it much more than this, which is great for a podcast format, Matt, but I don't want to apply context or try and figure out what they're talking about or speculate on what they're talking about or what the issue is, because quite frankly, I don't know. I know that De'Aaron and Malik had interactions during this game here tonight. I know that De'Aaron and Malik are still close. In fact, I know that Malik was teasing De'Aaron a little bit coming into tonight's game about the reception that he was going to receive from fans. And De'Aaron gave no indication of any bad blood with anybody. He dapped up Domantas Sabonis. It was brief, but he still did it, right? He had some long embraces with many other teammates. So I don't think they're it's a moment that is noticeable and that people are going to try and make into something. I don't think it really is something, but that's just my read on the situation. I did see Rasay after the game, got the chance to say goodbye to her, and she was in great spirits. This was after Malik's the confrontation with Malik. She was in great spirits, and as was Fox tonight. So De'Aaron tonight. So I don't think there's really anything to be overly concerned about with that, but it's certainly something that drew a lot of people's attention. What should be drawing your attention, though, is that Athletic article that was written by Sam Amick and Anthony Slater. Go and read that article. There's a lot in there to unpack. Honestly, I could do probably a whole podcast on that article. I'm not really going to at this point in time. ultimately, what I want you to do is read that article and the stuff that's coming out in that article. A lot of stuff in which I knew and I've known about, and a lot of us have known about here in Sacramento, but out of respect and journalistic integrity and conversations with different parties and things like that, it was not our place to share it. Read that article, and if you want to talk about or hyper-focus in on specific things, hey, that's totally fine. But from the broad standpoint, read that article and think about just the state of this organization. Think about how the organization has operated really over the last 13 years. I think it's 13 years since Vivek Ranadive took over. And think about how that may or may not have influenced De'Aaron Fox's decision to move on and the way everything went down. Just think about it. You don't have to change your mind. You can still be mad at De'Aaron Fox. I'm not telling you anything like that. But just have that full context and understand those aspects of the story before you ultimately make that decision. Right? And I'll let you make that decision for yourself. I won't try and influence your decision any which way. But I'll say this. There's a reason why myself and a lot of other people here in Sacramento that are media members have been kind of pro-Fox through this entire thing and have defended De'Aaron Fox through this entire thing. It's because of a lot of the information that came out in that article and information that came out from De'Aaron Fox specifically in an article with ESPN that was also published today. So go and check those out. Give those reads. At least have that context so you can then formulate your own opinion and decide, again, if you're angry at Fox or if you've moved on or whatever the case may be. Last thing I want to talk about tonight, the Sacramento Kings are losing an amazing guy. Luke Laux is one of the lead assistants for, it was Mike Brown, but he's one of the lead assistants for Doug Christie. He is the guy that's pretty much in charge of the defense, took that over from Jordi Fernandez. Luke Laux is the man that worked hand in hand with De'Aaron Fox. He's largely responsible for De'Aaron Fox's improvement as a shooter, right? He was the guy that went with De'Aaron Fox on De'Aaron's honeymoon to work with him on his game. Fox and Luke worked together all the time during the offseason. Like, these guys are connected at the hip. Luke Laux has accepted the head coaching position at Florida State, which is, I believe, his alma mater. It's a dream job of his, right? Really, really cool that Luke gets this opportunity. It's a big loss for the Kings organization. It is. Just trust me when I say that. Now, there was a pretty, at least in my opinion, a pretty good understanding that Luke was probably not going to return after this season, considering he was a lead assistant for Mike Brown and Doug Christie took over. And if Doug sticks around, if the Kings give Doug the position full-time, they'll give him the freedom to build his own staff. And I'm not saying that none of these guys on the staff right now will stick around with Doug or that Doug wouldn't want any of them. But my belief was that Luke Laux and Jay Triano especially were not going to be sticking around beyond this season. So for Luke to get this opportunity, it's a bummer because as far as I understand, that means he's leaving the Sacramento Kings mid-season to go and take over Florida State. But Luke is phenomenal. I've had the opportunity to kind of get to know him. I've had a handful of conversations with him. I wouldn't call him a friend or anything like that, but every conversation I've had, and I got to chat with him a little bit on the court tonight and congratulate him and his family. Phenomenal dude. Unbelievably great basketball mind. I even got the opportunity to speak with Mike Brown a little bit today about Luke. And Mike, of course, is super supportive of Luke and this opportunity for Luke Laux. So this is a big loss for the Kings organization, and I don't know if Luke would ever hear this, but congratulations, Luke, on this opportunity. Wishing you the absolute best at Florida State. Crazy night here in Sacramento, but a fun night with the Kings getting the 127-109 victory over the San Antonio Spurs. Now I want to hear from you, your thoughts on tonight, your thoughts on Fox's return, Zach LaVine's big game, how the Kings are going to fare through this doom stretch that begins on Sunday. It's all fair game. Hit me up with it at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.